My view is now that we have abortion where everybody wanted it from a legal standpoint, the states will determine by vote or legislation or perhaps both, and whatever they decide must be the law of the land, in this case, the law of the state.
Former President Donald Trump refusing to take a position on whether or not he supports a federal abortion ban. Now, in a 4-minute video posted to Truth Social, Trump claimed credit for the Supreme Court's overturning of Roe v. Wade, but he refused to say that there should be a federal abortion ban. Instead, he said that it should be left up to the states. Joining me now with the latest is my colleague, The Hill's Mychael Schnell. Mychael, how are Democrats reacting to Trump's abortion position?
Yeah, pouncing on it, Kevin. President Biden putting out a lengthy and a fiery statement this morning, essentially knocking former President Donald Trump for taking credit for overturning Roe v. Wade. And we've heard this statement from him in times in the past. He put 3 conservative justices on the bench. Those were the ones who then voted to overturn Roe v. Wade with that Dobbs decision back in June 2022, setting in motion, essentially sending back the question of abortion to the states. So we're seeing President Biden slam Trump for taking credit for that decision, and then also just for his saying that abortion should be left to the states. Of course, Democrats want to see federal protections for abortion. They want to try to codify the protections that were within Roe v. Wade. So this 4.5-minute video put out by former President Trump this morning gave Democrats a lot of fodder as they head into the election season and try to campaign on this issue.
You know, it's also interesting because some conservatives that I'm hearing from are saying that Trump didn't go far enough for them. And in fact, that they had wanted him to push for an all-out ban. Does Trump risk alienating the far right with his position?
Yeah, I mean, it's a real possibility. Evangelical voters who want to see him impose a federal abortion ban, who want to see him go farther on this question of women's reproductive rights. We're hearing it already from some conservatives in elected office and political figures. First off, Senator Lindsey Graham, Republican from South Carolina, somebody who does not frequently go against former President Trump. He's a very close ally of Trump. He wrote in a statement, quote, "I respectfully disagree with President Trump's statement that abortion is a states' rights issue." He says that there should be a national minimum standard that limits abortion at 15 weeks. This was also echoed by former Vice President Mike Pence, who was on the ticket with Trump. A lot of folks saw Pence as the one who helped bring in those evangelical voters back in 2016. Mike Pence, in a statement on X, writing, quote, that President Trump's statement was, quote, "a slap in the face to the millions of pro-life Americans who voted for him in 2016 and 2020. So right there, Vice President Mike Pence looking at the electoral consequences that could come with this decision. As he said, it should be left up to the states. And he did not indicate in any way, in any fashion, what he would do with a federal abortion ban, what weak criteria he thinks is right. He didn't go into that area at all.
But, when you look historically at the past elections since the overturning of Roe versus Wade, it's helped Democrats, especially in down ballot races amongst independent voters in suburban districts and amongst moderate voters. I mean, when you look specifically at women who are such a key constituency for this upcoming cycle, how are women viewing this? Women voters who are more moderate and leaning?
Look, remember back in 2022 during the midterms, everyone was expecting this red wave for Republicans to really usher in a number of seats in the House and the Senate. That wave did not come to shore. Instead, better than expected results by Democrats blunted that red wave. It was largely because Democratic voters were galvanized for abortion and women's reproductive rights. Those midterm elections coming just months after the Dobbs decision that overturned Roe v. Wade, it really galvanized these Democratic voters. So I think that anytime we see abortion now in the headlines as we inch closer to the November presidential and those down ballot races, Democrats are going to be giddy about this possibility because they can continue to message on it. They have a successful winning message, and particularly it's one that Republicans still haven't exactly figured out, as we're seeing right now, former President Trump saying it should be left up to the states, and we're already seeing this GOP infighting based on that statement.
Does what happened down in Alabama impact the blue wall for Democrats? What I mean there is when you're seeing everything happening in the South and the conversation about abortion and IVF and everything going on in Alabama, are Democrats and the Biden re-election campaign looking at states like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Ohio, and other states, Michigan, for example, in terms of their blue wall, that this is an issue they feel is going to help them protect their blue wall?
I mean, they're going to have to protect it at all costs for whatever works. If abortion is what works, absolutely they're going to go in and message on that. Look, I think that we've seen, as I said before, this is an issue that excites voters across the country, particularly Democratic voters across the country. So, of course, when you talk about different voters, there are different issues that, pertain most to them. We're having a conversation about abortion, but in the 2024 election, polls have shown that immigration is going to be the top issue. That is what voters are most concerned about, the situation at the southern border. It has topped the issues poll after poll. It's something that the Biden administration has had a tougher time on. The border has been a key vulnerability for President Biden. It's something that Democrats really haven't figured out what to message on. So they're going to try to pay less attention to that and more attention on what works. And that's their messaging on abortion. And you mentioned that cadre of important swing states. They're going to have to protect their wins there and convince voters that President Biden deserves another 4 years in office, because that blue wall, as it's often referred to, is really going to be integral for the Biden campaign to keep in their corner to win in 2024.
All right, and don't come at me in the comment sections. I know that Ohio has been trending for Republicans and it's not part of the blue wall. I was just doing my geography map. I recognize that that's not one of the states for the Democrats. Just putting that out there for those watching. Congress is returning Mychael Schnell. What are they going to do with Ukraine? It's crunch time.
Oh my God, that is the main question right now, Kevin. Nobody exactly knows what's going to happen. Speaker Mike Johnson has kept his cards very close to his chest. One thing that we do know is that this is going to come up soon. He was on Fox News about a week and a half ago now, and he said that the foreign aid, supplemental foreign aid, is going to come up, quote, right after Easter recess comes to an end. That, of course, officially ends tomorrow on Tuesday for the House. So the expectation is we're going to see some movement on this question of Ukraine aid. Again, Johnson has not yet indicated his plan for how to move foreign aid, but he sort of floated a few details last week. First was using what's called the Repo Act, which essentially lets lawmakers use seized frozen Russian assets to put that money towards helping Ukraine. Another idea that has been floated several times is sending aid to Ukraine as a loan. And the third thing is this energy provision that would essentially have the Biden administration flip one of its stances on liquefied natural gas, putting that provision in the foreign aid supplemental as sort of what could be seen as a sweetener for Republicans. So 2 questions, Kevin. A, does any of this stand? Is any of this actually in the bill? Who knows? And B, will it work? Will enough Republicans and Democrats be able to get on board and get it over the finish line? And even if that happens, does Speaker Mike Johnson still have a job after? Because, of course, a key part of this entire conversation is Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. She filed a motion to vacate against Johnson, has not yet forced a vote on it, but she is urging him in no uncertain terms not to put Ukraine aid on the floor. That could be the trigger for that ouster vote.
All right, we're marking the 6-month anniversary of the Israel-Hamas war, and both Biden and Trump have raised concerns about Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. So when you're talking to sources up there on Capitol Hill, where do things stand in terms of the approach that Washington is now taking for the Israel-Hamas war?
Yeah, well, we heard President Biden. We saw in that readout from the White House with his call with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that how Israel handles the humanitarian situation in Gaza. Essentially, President Biden laid out a number of steps he expects the Israelis to take that will then determine U.S. policy on Israel. Now, that was a notable shift for the Biden administration, because in the past we had seen, especially after that World Central Kitchen attack, we heard from several administration officials saying that that attack would not affect the U.S.'s support for Israel. Now Biden is floating that there could be a change. Now, will that happen? We'll have to wait and see. I will note that it was a welcome sign that the Israelis had green lighted last week 3 new humanitarian corridors to open, which is, again, a welcome sign for getting that aid into Gaza and helping there. But yeah, look, just maybe 6 months ago, the thought of sending aid to Ukraine, to Israel, was a no-brainer, right? It was thought that it would easily sail through Congress. Now, there were some issues over there because Ukraine aid stalled and Speaker Mike Johnson first tried to make that funding offset. But at that point, it would be thought that Israel aid would sail through easily. Now we're hearing from a number of Democrats who are saying that conditions need to be laid on aid for Israel, that the humanitarian crisis in Gaza has gotten so bad that the Israelis now need to be held accountable by putting conditions on this aid. Will that happen? That remains to be seen. But again, the next 2 weeks are going to be significant in addition to Ukraine aid for Israel aid, because all this foreign aid could move altogether.
President Biden unveiling a new student loan debt plan in Madison, Wisconsin. How's this going to impact folks with student loan debt?
Yeah, I mean, this is a significant announcement from the Biden administration. It would largely impact those who have, quote, runaway interest. In addition to borrowers who have been paying their loans for 20 years, they're going to qualify for forgiveness under the income-driven repayment plans. And essentially what this would do, it would give borrowers $20,000 in loan forgiveness for balances that have gotten so high because of unpaid interest since entering that repayment period, regardless of income. And those who qualify for a specific plan would get the full balance of their unpaid interest forgiven. Now, what are the numbers here? How many people does the Biden administration say this is going to help? It would result in 25 million Americans getting relief from balance growth that they got because of unpaid interest, and 23 million would see their full balance growth canceled. So a significant move right there from the Biden administration. Of course, as we're getting closer to November, this has been one of the president's key priorities his entire term. So a big announcement this morning from the White House.
Do you care about the eclipse?
I care about the eclipse, Kevin. I'm excited to watch it.
Why do you care
Absolutely.
about the eclipse?
I do. I was what they call a phys nerd in high school. I was a science nerd. I was very into it.
All right. I mean, I'm a nerd too, but I'm such a nerd. This is why you shouldn't be excited about the eclipse. You want to know why, Schnell?
Let's hear. Tell me. Okay.
Because every 18 months, you would act like this eclipse thing happens like once every millennia. No, it happens once every 18 months, a full eclipse. Somewhere on the planet Earth, there is an eclipse. I really don't get the big deal at all. I think that
I'm going to watch it here in Washington, D.C. with my own eyes, with glasses, of course.
Well, if the eclipse has already happened, just make sure, Schnell, that you don't stare directly at the sun. That's all I'm going to say. Remember the photo?
Some folks have mentioned that. Some folks have said that.
Well, some other folks are saying that it's a sign from God that we should repent. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. Okay, so she's saying that the earthquake and that the eclipse, that it's a sign to repent. Clearly, she doesn't know what former President George Washington interpreted the eclipse as, which was a good omen, an omen that the troops were going to defeat the British in a battle for the Revolutionary War. Do you think Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, Mychael Schnell, is correct that Americans should repent?
Kevin, I am a congressional reporter. This is not my expertise area. I am going to take the congressional reporter angle on this and say Congresswoman Greene is heading into a very high stakes 2 weeks. She's got a lot of cards. Depending how she plays them, there could be a lot of chaos in the House. So I think she's trying to be ominous a little bit because she knows she's got a lot of eyeballs.
Nah, Schnell, you're dodging. Let me tell you,
I took the cop out.
I totally disagree. I would say this to MTG's face. I've interviewed her before. I know you have as well. MTG, it's not a bad sign. It's a good sign. Listen to George Washington, MTG. It's a good sign. Mychael Schnell, good reporting as always. And I respect the dodge.
Thanks, Kevin.
Trump Media CEO Devin Nunes says that Truth Social parent company is well positioned to turn profitable. The reason, according to Nunes, is that the newly public company is without debt. Regulatory filings last week showed the group lost $58 million in 2023. Now, after that news, shares of the Trump Media stock dropped nearly 50% to about $40. That's after reaching a high of just more than $79 during its first week of trading. Nunes did not say when he expected the company to turn profitable, but as of Monday morning, the stock was trading just under $40 per share. And one more thing. You know that famous poster, "You Can Do It"? The image of a woman flexing her muscle, nicknamed Rosie the Riveter, personified the strength many spouses had during the Greatest Generation's World War II efforts to build for the common defense. Now those women are in their 90s. And this week, some of them who are still living are on Capitol Hill. The Rosie the Riveters will receive a hard-earned Congressional Gold Medal. Thank you, Rosies, for all that you and your families have done for our country. We can do it because you already did. That's it for today's Daily Debrief. My name is Kevin Cirilli. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to The Hill's YouTube channel. And come on back here soon for the intersection between politics and policy.